October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and tonight we are wearing our pink ribbons and pink shirts to bring awareness to this disease. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women worldwide. Early diagnosis is crucial. We at Wilmot Township encourage all women to undergo screening and educate themselves on prevention. Let us have a moment of silence to honor everyone affected by the disease. Thank you, everyone. Next item is the land acknowledgement. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant in the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. And we do have one addition to the agenda. And the recommendation for that is that item 11.3.2 be added to the agenda under reports as report number PW 2020-17, extension of contract -2020/2021 winter maintenance. That would be moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. First, we cover the minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as presented. Council meeting October 5, 2020. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. Are there any corrections, omissions? Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor. I just have a clarification question about the process that's changed in the minutes. It doesn't identify who was making the questions. I'm just looking for clarification on that.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. So with regards to minutes, they are about the decisions made by council as opposed to who said what. So that is why we've sort of changed things a little bit. We've actually made a couple other changes throughout the past few months, sort of away from making it more about really what were the decisions made by council and specifically what brought about those decisions, as opposed to necessarily prescribing specifically everything people said. Which, if you go to different minutes throughout the province, you'll see so many different examples ranging from people who only put in resolutions all the way to people who put in a list of everything people say. I felt that this was a better balance to hone in on the decision making as a true record of the corporation.
Okay. No other comments or questions, omissions, corrections? Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have a couple of presentations tonight. First one is the indoor arena ice usage and needs update report.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm happy to lead this off. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Anand Desai from Monteith Brown Planning Incorporated. Anand will be presenting the results of the indoor arena ice usage and needs update this evening. And I also have Manny Jones, Manager of Customer Service and Community Development on the call, who I told her I was going to call her amazing, and I am. And she's here to assist with some of the historical information on this report. And the report is a follow-up from a similar study completed in 2013 and subsequently was reviewed as part of the 2017 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And Monteith Brown has been part of all of those previous reports, as well as this one. And the recommendation tonight is that we take the next step using Monteith Brown's expertise and history of the township to look at future sites for the third ice pad, should council be interested in pursuing that option. So I can turn it over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Sandy. Can everybody hear me? I just want to make sure because I can't see myself on the screen, but I hit unmute. So can someone acknowledge that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, Your Worship, members of council, again, my name is Anand Desai. I'm with Monteith Brown, as Sandy has just said. Thank you very much for having us attend today virtually to present the indoor arena ice usage and needs analysis. It's a mouthful to say. I guess I will be instructing someone at the township just to advance the slide. So I'll just say next slide, please. So the origins of what we're doing stems back from a recommendation contained in the Parks, Facilities, and Recreation Services Master Plan that the township adopted back in 2017. Essentially, the master plan looked at all recreation, parks, and facility needs. In particular, with respect to the ice and arenas in Wilmot, it suggested that around the year 2020, the need for a third ice pad should be reevaluated and looking at a number of options in which to accommodate a third ice pad if it was deemed to be required. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this 2020 ice usage and needs analysis is really to implement that recommendation from the master plan. The purpose of the study is to assess the timing of future ice pad provision in the Township of Wilmot, and it takes into account the current state, the current arena conditions and the current state of your township as it stands today. So I will get into those details as this presentation progresses. Next slide, please. So some of those factors that we were considering were to assess trends in arena demand, consider local ice sport participation and your current demographics, evaluate any changes in how your arenas have been used since the 2017 master plan, a renewed focus on reaching out to the major ice sport organizations in your community, along with various other renters of your arenas, and ultimately to project future ice surface demand so that you as council and township staff have information at hand through which to make a decision as to when, where, and if in fact a third ice pad is required. Next slide, please. So the study timeline was largely initiated in the early summer, kind of right when that first wave of COVID was kind of peaking. But thankfully, it didn't really impact the study timeline because we had started after the pandemic was underway. Consultations were modified to take place virtually or over the phone. So we were able to reach out to a number of your arena stakeholder groups using Zoom and other means. A feedback form was also distributed to the arena groups in your community. I really spent the summer assessing the market conditions and the need for ice pads, provided a draft report that We presented to township staff just to make sure that our inputs and background information was in fact correct. And then today, before you, we're here to CAT Council. Next slide, please. So arena stakeholders that contributed input include the minor hockey associations, both boys and girls, the skating club, the Firebirds, and then we also heard from 15 adult teams and pickup leagues. They're the kind of one-off renters. So we feel like we got a good cross-section of input from the arena stakeholders. Some of the themes, unsurprisingly, COVID was top of mind for a number of groups. Again, these conversations were held in early June. So at that time, groups, they were just really in an uncertain position with respect to how COVID might impact people coming back and registering with them or playing with them. In the time since, we understand that certain groups have come back now, and we can get into that in a moment. What was fairly, I guess, notable, and it confirms findings from previous studies or themes from previous studies that we've done for the Township of Wilmot, is that your minor hockey groups are renting time outside of your boundaries, your municipal boundaries, because simply of capacity constraints. The organizations estimated that they could book another 37 to 56 more hours in Wilmot if it was available, and that's over and above what they are currently booking. And a number of those adult teams and pickup leagues, they just stated that it's difficult for them to grow under their current time allotment. Again, without more hours, they can't really take on more people. Next slide, please. This slide contains a lot of information, so I won't spend too much time going through it. The key points to be, I guess, considered through here is that your township, the arena rates, utilization rates are in the 90% ranges. That's really strong. We tend to see typically, say between 80 and 90% in other communities, sometimes even lower. So really that means that there is very little time for groups to pick up additional opportunities to play within the current supply. Wilmot is no surprise to you folks. The population is growing, projected to reach about 28,500 people by the year 2031. And your average annual rate growth is very strong. And so with population growth, it's usually safe to presume that some degree of pressure will be added or generated for recreation activities such as arena sports. Notably in the demographics, your population of children and teens is also growing. That's despite an overall aging of your population. And that kind of 5 to 19-year-old age group, they're your prime users or your primary users of prime arena times. So again, sustained growth in those populations reasonably could lead to one to expect more pressures to be placed on your arena system. And I guess the most important point, or one of the most important points to note through this is, unlike other communities where we are seeing some either stagnation or declining participation in arena sports, Wilmot seems to be bucking that trend. And really it's the number of registrants in your arena programs through the local groups has in fact grown and has been growing for some time now. That flies in the face of, again, provincial and national trends where cost is pricing certain people out of the arena system, changing immigration patterns where newcomers to Canada are coming from countries that aren't necessarily associated with ice sports. Wilmot is bucking that trend, and so it is driving demand for your arenas. So that is a positive sign with respect to arena usage and arena performance. Next slide, please. So when we looked at the projection of the arena market moving forward to the year 2031, we're projecting a 33% in the number of players. And based on the studies that we had prepared for the Township of Wilmot in 2013 and 2017, those numbers are consistent with the forecasted growth. So again, it just speaks to the fact that Wilmot has been able to really sustain how its arena participation is going. And that's credit to your groups and to yourselves, to your staff. What we are finding within that increase in the projection of players or skaters is that the number of ice sport participants that are youth will grow by approximately 400 people. Another 100 people, adults, could expect it to be added. Now, there is a qualification, and this qualification is consistent again with what was said in 2013 and 2017 to you folks. Our projection model is really tied to the township continuing to attain the population forecast that the region of Waterloo has established, and that you continue to kind of buck that provincial national trend, whereby your current participation rate, that is the number of people as a percentage of your population that play ice sports, stays at the same level. And again, we have reasonable expectation to believe that can happen based on your historical trend, but that's not to say that that trend will stay forever. So that is a fairly important caveat. Next slide, please. So based on that projection model, we are seeing a demand for 3 ice pads in the short term. As we mentioned, your groups are booking about 15 hours a week outside of your community. So there is an indication that certain demand is being displaced to other communities, but if we're available, would be picked up by your groups. So there's a degree of demand there. When we looked at the number of registered players, this is consistent with the 2017 master plan and the 2013 study. The service level target that's used is tied to the number of players. And so when we project that number of players out to the year 2031, we can see that there is the demand for 3 ice pads. Generally, under that provision model, that 1 ice pad per 450 skaters, that results in about 30 to 4 hours of arena time based on your current supply as being needed. And so interestingly, that really coincides with that range that user groups are also telling us in terms of how much time they could book in Wilmot if it was available. Based on the current projections, the need for a 4th ice pad would be likely shortly around or shortly after the year 2031. So that 4th ice pad, the demand for it isn't as immediate as the need for ice pad number 3, but it's still, again, on the radar, assuming population and participation rates remain as forecasted. Next slide, please. So the table you see there really reflects that application of the service level target to the player base. We factor in youth registration as the target because, again, they are the primary users of prime time. It's not to say, however, that adult needs aren't accounted for in that model. Adult needs are. It would assume, however, though, adults are probably still using more of those shoulder hour periods. And your staff, I believe, are in the midst of preparing an ice allocation policy. This standard really falls in line and is supportive of that ice allocation policy. So again, half an ice pad is equivalent to about 30 to 40 hours of demand per week, and again, growing to about a deficit of a full ice pad or a little bit more than that by the year 2031. Next slide, please. So really to conclude the process, with that articulation of ice needs, the next steps for the township will be to examine the location and cost factors for the 3rd ice pad, provided that council agrees, that there is in fact merit in exploring that 3rd ice pad. Site selection, cost estimates, those were not included in this current scope of work that we were retained for. The thinking was the township wanted to just make sure that a third ice pad was in fact needed, but there is obviously that next stage implementation phase where the details need to be more fully fleshed out. Again, as to whether a third ice pad should be added by way of recommissioning the new Hamburg Community Center for ice, whether an expansion to the WRC is feasible and appropriate, or in the absence of those two factors, whether the construction of a new arena at a different site would be more advantageous. Again, that is something that the township will be looking at in a next phase. Next slide, please. So the last, I guess, important aspect as well, I touched on some of those population and participation related assumptions that underpin our projection model. Our projection model was never designed to factor in something like a COVID-19 where arenas were shut down, and there's a sense of fear among some in the community that could lead to an erosion in the number of people that are participating in recreation activity, not just ice sports. So really, as time progresses, especially with that fourth ice pad, we're fairly confident in demand remaining strong, notwithstanding COVID, for that third ice pad. But with respect to that fourth ice pad, especially, monitoring to see how participation rates may change. If your user groups are booking the same amount of time as they were historically, if they are continuing to show increases in the number of the players in their respective organizations, those need to be considered, along with any changes in supply among your regional neighbors if they're building arenas. North Dumfries, for example, is doing an arena study at the moment as well. Other communities have been looking at their ice pad supplies. And really that's the kind of litmus test, again, looking a little bit forward to see if in fact that fourth ice pad is needed. Next slide, please. So with that, thank you very much for that opportunity to present. I'd be happy to take any questions from council at this time.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Fisher, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, and thanks for the presentation. A question and a comment, I guess. When Sandy's predecessor was here, he told me that there is a lot of efficiencies to be had by having a double rink, one ice surface machine operating two pads. So with that thinking, I'm not sure about the benefits of refurbing the old arena and then 10 years from now having a need for another arena. And secondly, and maybe this is directed to Patrick, but with COVID, can you foresee any dollars available from higher tier governments if we were to put up a new arena?
Yeah, so I can take a first shot at addressing some of those comments, Councillor Fisher, thank you. With respect to the multi-pad efficiencies, most certainly, operationally, you as a township or any municipality tends to, I guess, have a lower, I guess, operating cost per square foot, if you want to say, or per hour, because, you wouldn't need two Zambonis at two separate arenas. The staffing, you could have some staffing efficiencies there. Groups as well, like arena groups also prefer multi-pad venues just because they can concentrate their programming in one spot. It's convenient. But that being said, if one only needs one ice pad for the foreseeable future, one has to balance that carefully, with the cost of building and operating that, I guess, additional pad if the demand is not in place. But these are things that, at least from the site selection perspective, that the next steps will be exploring through this evaluation. And then with respect to your question about COVID related funding, we have seen through the ISIP program, the Investing in Infrastructure in Canada, the government has earmarked a new COVID stream, but I'm not, again, your staff may have more insight into this. From our interpretation and read thus far, it seems to be more from a recreational perspective oriented to outdoor types of recreation that would allow people to keep physical space. So, that's more difficult in an indoor setting. So I don't know if an arena project would fall under that kind of new ISIP stream, but who knows? There may be further infrastructure stimulus programs that come out just to get the economy going. So those are my thoughts with respect to that.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Councillor Fisher. Yeah, as you'll recall, last year under the ISIP phase 2, which was community culture and recreation, we did submit an application for a large scale recreational amenity, recreation floor space for renovations to the New Hamburg Community Center, which we were unsuccessful in receiving funding for. I do echo the sentiments from the speaker that the COVID resilience stream definitely is not focused on indoor recreation infrastructure. It seems to have a focus on outdoor. We haven't seen all the details of that program yet. Having said that, the township's development charges background study completed in 2019, which this council adopted, did include provision of growth-related funding to support the building or expansion or whatever it ends up being of a floor space, recreation floor space, whether that relates to, it was more general in purpose, whether it relates to an arena ice pad or not. But that funding has been dedicated within our development charges background study. I believe we included around $6.5 million, so probably about 5.5 would be DC fundable towards that project. As with any big project, large scale project, we'll always look for any available programs from senior government sources and apply for them if possible.
Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Great to see the report come forward. Of course, we know this has been something that the community has been looking for and anticipating. Just a couple questions. One, I noticed. I mean, I note, and we're certainly aware that Wilmot does sort of, as you quoted our presenter, buck the trends when it comes to sort of the increase, not just the sustenance, but the increase in interest in ice time, which is fine. We need to acknowledge that. I guess my question is there a way to go about at least exploring a fourth strategy? And what I mean by this is, I know that we sort of are bucking the trends, and I know you also mentioned that our usage rate in prime time is like, sort of through the roof compared to other associations. How would we go about formally investigating what ice time allocations or what ice time is available? I know we get ice in other places. So how do we go about formally investigating ice time availability, say in Plattsville, Twin Center, Tavistock, along with possible minor hockey alignments or mergers with neighboring associations? Like, to me, if we're looking at neighboring associations that aren't bucking the trend and don't have 90% usage rates, is there the potential down the road for, and we see this across the province, smaller hockey associations merging to create larger hockey associations, and therefore having access to more than just the two arenas in Wilmot. But I don't know if there's a formal way to investigate that as a strategy or an option. So I guess my question might be both to Director Jackson and to the consultant. Is that sort of just, is it worthwhile to even explore that? Because I know, we would hate to see, for example, 7 years down the road, we have 3 ice pads and all of a sudden, there's a Wilmot, Waterloo, Wellington, some sort of new minor hockey association. And now we have access to 4 arenas and, 2 of which have been sort of only half used in the last 5 years because other associations aren't bucking the trend. So just a thought.
Yeah, and through you, your worship, to Councillor Gerber, no, you've hit the nail on the head right there in many respects. Participation in kind of more urban rural type of communities tends to be a little bit more regional than if it were isolated into, a city, for example. Fortunately, I guess for this process, we have also done work for the city of Kitchener's, with respect to the arenas, Township of North Dumfries, Zora, and a number of others in the region. So we have a pretty strong sense of, what those communities are doing, what challenges their groups are facing. It's what makes Wilmot really unique for us and surprising in that, a lot of those municipalities are, I guess, struggling with filling their arenas. And if they're not struggling with filling the arenas, they're challenged with, finding the money to, I guess, put back into some of their aging arenas. So, it is kind of complicated in that respect. I think Wilmot is, your arena usage, at least for that third ice pad, can be directly attributable. Most of it can be directly attributable to your local users. And so, right, Wilmot groups will want to play in Wilmot. We heard that loud and clear. So you also have then that added benefit of any kind of unused time that your local groups would use in a third ice pad. You have that benefit from the regional draw, from the adult groups, from minor hockey or skating that's taking place on the west side of Kitchener, which actually is a really big advantage for you folks right now. But again, I know I'm kind of rambling a bit, but your point is again really strong, Councillor Gerber, in that that regional demand could change on a dime, because we know that the city of Kitchener, at least in the past, has been contemplating a new recreation facility in its southwest. And now our last understanding is that, they might not be pursuing an arena. They're still thinking about it. And so if they were to build, let's say, a twin pad arena in the southwest, perhaps, that would affect a degree of demand that Kitchener groups are presently booking at the WRC. But again, notwithstanding all of that, we're fairly confident. And yes, we looked at the regional supplies. Township staff, we fully expect, would continue to monitor those trends. And when you continue to update your parks and recreation facility work, again, that's all built into those processes. So you will be up to speed in terms of how those trends will affect particularly that fourth ice pad.
Ms. Jackson, did you want to comment on that?
Sure, Mayor Armstrong. I guess the only thing I agree completely with Mr. Desai. The only thing I would add with respect to regionalizing hockey organizations, that's difficult for a municipality to try and
to be part of.
Try and maneuver. Obviously, they're run independently with boards, and some of the area, I'd have to do a little bit of homework to find out which ones, but some belong to the Alliance and some belong to the OHS. So there's different groups of hockey organizations and how they align. It is definitely a possibility. I would comment that relying on surrounding arenas, one of the dangers of that is that most of those arenas are also aging out. So those municipalities, you could end up trying to coordinate with those areas and then they decide to get out of the arena business. I don't know, that's just anecdotal, obviously, but it's certainly something worth looking at. And it doesn't take much to talk to the organizers to see if they're interested in anything like that, or if there's any kind of model that they could look at. But I also do agree that the locals want to play in their area, and the volunteers who run these organizations want to volunteer in there.
Yes.
So that would be my comments.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, totally agree with that as well. And I mean, and the other untapped, potential growth, I think, is, it's hard to identify the number of adult user groups who would book ice if they could and who have just stopped trying, or are going other places in dribs and drabs. 8 of them are playing over here with their group of 20 friends from another municipality or whatever. So there's certainly a lot of merit in being able to bring a lot of those things home in Wilmot. And I would just echo Councillor Fisher's thoughts. I mean, of the three strategies, I know that's going to be the subject of another report and another discussion. And I remember asking about this, years ago, is, where does, we've got a lot of acreage at the WRC. So where, is there a footprint there that accommodates a third arena, keeping in mind that the third ice pad doesn't need to be heavy in spectator space. Some of the other amenities that we already have at the WRC, a third pad may potentially be more of a practice pad, less of a footprint, less infrastructure going along with it. So I look forward to sort of seeing that. I see that's one of the strategies. I look forward to sort of seeing, what that actually might look like fleshed out with a full consultant's report attached to it.
Thank you. Councillor Fenning.
I've lost sound. Can you hear me? Well, I can't hear anyone else, so
You
I'm
can't?
assuming, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Mayor. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just have a few thoughts on this. It was really interesting to read the statistics. And one of the thoughts that came up for me is a few people that have commented to me about the changing demographics. And I myself have assumed that with immigrants coming from, as you said, areas where ice sports are not necessarily part of the culture or part of the way of thinking about raising their children and such, one would expect reduced participation in ice sports. But speaking to some individuals from that community who have grown up here, where, their parents maybe moved to Canada and now they are, they've come through school, they're coming through school, and they grew up with the Canadian attachment to ice sports. And so I'm wondering if there's any shift in that, or if you have any comments, have you seen anything that supports that anecdotal evidence that I've heard? And then another comment about usage, and I wonder perhaps if you can comment. It would appear to me that the girls' hockey is potentially the most impacted negatively by the lack of availability of ice prime time. And reading the comments, it would appear that the ability to service girls' need or girls' wish to participate in hockey and other ice sports has been particularly impacted. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fenning's questions and comments, both essentially relating to inclusion in your arena system. We'll start with, I guess, the more immigration-related trends. So yes, municipalities have, factored immigration as one of the, I guess, barriers or reasons for declining arena trends. But it's not the only reason, obviously. I mean, like I mentioned, cost is a big factor, the time commitment, the travel, aging population. These are certain things, but immigration has played a role. That being said, in certain municipalities, again, both that are large and culturally diverse to, some smaller municipalities, that may have less, I guess, cultural diversity. We are seeing certain newcomers to Canada. They want to also become immersed in Canadian culture and learn about Canadian culture. And so, just because somebody comes from a certain country doesn't automatically say, they want to play a different sport that they were used to always playing in their home country. Maybe they still want to play that, but it doesn't preclude them from wanting to try or having their kids try to be part of, I guess I'm using air quotes right now, traditional Canadian sports. And my father is an example of that, came in the 70s and grew up a Habs fan in Ontario, created some conflicts, but again, he was much more, he came at a time where maybe there was, more forced assimilation, but he truly loves the game of hockey and came to love the game of hockey. So, and instilled that on the rest of our family. So yeah, I think as much as immigration can trend participation rates one way, if a municipality is proactive and it recognizes that newcomers are looking for this type of program, maybe providing some communities provide assistance like free skate rental programs, or just come try it out, like those types of programs, like the Learn To programs, whether it's again directly offered by the municipality or through the local user groups, and they have a role to play as well in attracting your newcomer population. But again, when it comes to the newcomer population, your immigration rates, your visible minority rates, as much as they have increased over the last 15, 20 years, they're still below the Waterloo region kind of level, but we can certainly expect that to only trend upwards just based on the nature of immigration. With respect to your question and comment about girls hockey, girls hockey, they communicated to us, and they said it in 2017 to us as well, that it is difficult for them to get the amount of ice time that they need. They face challenges in that respect, and their reliance kind of goes back to Councillor Gerber's previous comment as well. Their reliance on the arenas in other municipalities is also challenging, because those municipalities are serving their user groups first under their allocation policies. So, if girls hockey were to lose ice time in Wellesley, for example, where I think they play right now, if I recall correctly, or lose more ice time, again, where do they pick up that demand, if not in Wilmot or there? So, I think, again, it's one of those things. Your ice allocation policy that's currently being developed will hopefully, set out and make it clear to groups where the priority is assigned. And girls hockey, notwithstanding that they're girls, I mean, it's minor hockey, and minor hockey tends to take priority in most arena systems. So one would hope that boys and girls minor hockey will be able to find the time that they need, that adults will pick up those kind of shoulder hours, and in that way you're striving towards, I guess, that kind of inclusion in your arena system as a whole. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yeah, it's becoming a real problem with the arenas around the area, as the report shows that North Dumfries is looking at wanting to build a new one and to mothball one of the old arena that they have. And Wellesley, last year they started their junior C season they had to use another arena because the arena in Wellesley was uninhabitable until they did some work on the roof. So they applied to build a new arena in Wellesley, and the funding wasn't granted this year. But I mean, everybody's looking to expand. So. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to Mr. Desai's comments with respect to the girls' hockey, just to provide an understanding of the ice allocation process. Typically, historical ice, they retain the same ice they had before. So girls' hockey, and Ms. Jones has been messaging me here, and thank you for that history. Amazing Manny. That organization started in 2006, 2007. So they are a newer organization, and as new organizations build and grow and need more ice time, because girls hockey has taken on quite a drive everywhere in the country. The demand is higher, but it's very difficult to break into that historical ice that has been always booked by other groups. So that's one of the reasons it looks as though it could be a bit lopsided. It's certainly not an intentional circumstance, but it's once you have ice time, and prime time ice is like gold, it's very difficult to wrestle that away from an organization to try and get it shared out. So I just wanted to add that as a newer organization, that makes that struggle that much more difficult for them, and certainly an additional ice pad would address that.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just a quick follow-up to say that I believe Manny and I've had this conversation, and so, but in the context of looking at future expansion, not expanding would probably have the greatest impact for those reasons. And so, yeah, it was not intended to imply or insinuate in any way that there's an intention to not include. So yes, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I think the next steps, which are looking at possibilities, is going to be quite a conversation. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Jackson or Ms. Jones. I know we're not technically voting yet on the recommendation, but I just like a little bit of clarification on it. So it's number 2, and it's, I think just because of the fact that it's actually sort of asking us to look at a study on 3 options of different potential arenas. But the first part of that also states that provide additional ice by next fall, I'm assuming, because 21, 22 would mean next September-ish. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact that we're asking for a study to approve another arena, but then also asking for one to be ready for next year. And I find that if we're, say, using the brand new property option, I can't see that we would get an arena built in 9 months kind of thing, or like a year. It seems a bit rushed. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that particular option. Might be getting ahead of myself on the recommendation, but I still try to get how that we're going to be voting on that part.
Through the mayor, that's an excellent question. That is not the intent of the recommendation. It is intended to do the study. I think that perhaps Mr. Desai can confirm, but the intent of that comment that we could utilize a rink as early as the 2021-2022 season is really what is intended by that statement. So if we were able to, we could fill an arena, the primetime ice of an arena next year, as early as next year. But that is definitely not a possibility. The study will happen next year. Then some additional planning, possibly a report will come back to council, and it will be a year or 2 or possibly 3 before we actually could open a new arena should council support that process. I don't know if Mr. Desai wants to comment on that further.
Yeah, certainly, Sandy. Thank you. Through you, your worship. What Sandy, Ms. Jackson said is totally accurate. Really, that the intent of that statement is to impress upon council that the need for that third ice pad is fairly immediate, but recognizing that there's still due diligence that needs to take place, and a reality. It'll be difficult to build a new arena and then have it open for a year from now. Could be done, but again, not to say that we want to make sure that all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. I know I bungled that analogy, but yes, absolutely. The director is correct.
So a follow up through that,
Yes.
through you, Mayor. So let's just say the study. When do you anticipate the study being completed? And then with that, if it came back, let's say that one of the bigger pro would be to actually do rehabilitate the community center. Could that be a possibility to have it up and running by next fall, or is that still a long way off? It's just letting us know that there's an immediate need.
Correct. Through you, your worship, it is letting you know there's an immediate need. I think as you look at all the different options, especially with the New Hamburg Community Center, there'll need to be engineering analysis done, architectural analysis done, to just determine, what are the costs and implications of that ice going back into the arena. So that will certainly be subject to, a few weeks of work, I would think, at least. And then to evaluate the other sites as well. There needs to be some work done to bring it back to council for your consideration, as well as the community. We can't lose sight of the fact that, you know, the next process, you know, maybe it should involve a degree of community consultation, building on what we've learned through this study, because people certainly had, at least the arena stakeholders had strong opinions, you know, one way or the other, where they felt a third ice pad should go. Some felt there is, you know, a degree of merit in bringing back ice in New Hamburg. Others, you know, thought that the co-location with the WRC made a lot of sense for them programmatically and would be convenient. So again, there is work to be done. I'll go back to that comment that statement was for, you know, you could reasonably expect to have an arena operating where you'd want it to be operating in 2021. But the logistical reality of making that happen is challenging.
Sorry, one more follow-up through you,
Yep.
Mayor Armstrong.
Go ahead.
Would there be a possibility, I see the three options, could there be a fourth option of recommissioning as well as adding to the WRC? Because we've already established through last year's report that we'd like to keep the community center up and running. So as a multi-purpose, would that also be something that the report could look at as sort of like, if we're looking at 4 pads in 2031, could it be that we work on the 2 locations that we already have established versus a brand new location?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. I mean, well, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, we'd still need to talk about the parameters for, you know, what's included in those next steps in terms of what's looked at. But you know, I just think from our perspective, if there is an option that isn't identified in those 3 and it makes sense, and township staff and township council believe it's an option worthy of considering, that next phase report is the time to think about that option. Again, so long as the township collectively feels that, you know, whatever options you direct anybody to look at, you know, has that merit and is pragmatic.
Okay, thank you. I see no further questions. Oh, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. Just an additional comment to Mr. Desai, and I think I can hear our Director of Corporate Services mind working here. Financially, we still have to look at the costs of whatever location might be recommended out of this study. And although there are some funds in the DCs that were referenced earlier by Mr. Kelly, that won't be enough to do the full project, and it certainly wouldn't be enough to do 2 projects in 2 locations, but we could definitely include some information about that site and what we do with that site. As Mr. Desai said, we haven't created the terms of reference for this next study yet. We don't have approval yet from council to do this study. So as soon as if we get that approval, we'll develop that terms of reference, and we can certainly include a piece in there with respect to that location and what the future looks like if it doesn't become an ice rink, if that's what I understand your comment to be, Councillor.
Yeah, I think you're very correct in saying that there's going to be a lot of conversation because there are so many different ideas. I mean, we're going to be looking at a 3rd ice pad, and we're also being told that probably a 4th ice pad down the road. So, you know, it depends how forward thinking we want to be when we're selecting a location. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, just to add on to Ms. Jackson's comments there about the DC, I want to make it clear that those funds were included within the DC study. I don't want people thinking that we have $6.5 million sitting in a bank account ready to just flow out into this. Those DC funds haven't been collected, and that's contingent upon growth within the community. So make sure that's clear to everyone on the meeting and watching the meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. I see no further comments. So the recommendations in the indoor arena ice usage and needs analysis update prepared by Monteith Brown Planning Consultants Limited be received, and that staff proceed with recommendation number 2 to undertake further study to determine strategies for delivering a third ice surface, and that funding be included into the 2021 budget as per the existing 10-year capital forecast at an estimated cost of $55,000, and that the existing contract with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, Inc. be extended to include strategies for delivering a third ice surface report. Moved by Councillor Fenning, seconded by Councillor Gerber. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So next we have Stephanie from Rare Charitable. Oh, you're there.
Wonderful.
There you go.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I will pull up my presentation and share the screen.
The Zoom host will be showing your slides and forwarding the slides if you'd like to let him know when you'd like them advanced.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's even better. Well, thank you so much. We are here tonight to introduce you to our new Rare Sites Land Securement Strategy. So if you could please move to the first slide. Thank you. As many of you know, as a Land Trust and Environmental Institute, conservation has always been Rare's priority. And currently we own 989 acres of conservation land in Waterloo Region in Wellington County. And we will actually be celebrating our 20-year anniversary next year as our education and research programs continue to grow. We are currently in the process of finalizing our next 5-year strategy and plans, and one key focus will be to launch and implement the Rare Sites Land Securement Strategy, which I will be presenting here today. Next, please. As you are all aware of, Waterloo Region is home to more than 550,000 people and expected to grow by 35% over the next 20 years. So with this increase in population, land is also increasingly becoming more highly sought after, and it is really important that we grow the percentage of conservation land alongside development so that we can protect the ecosystem services and other benefits our health and well-being depends upon. Next, please. So in fall 2014, Chris Gosling, who was the planner at the region at the time, first hosted a meeting to discuss the opportunity for a community organized, not-for-profit, multi-property regional land trust. And after many follow-up meetings with representatives from various environmental groups and other interested parties, many representatives came together to form the Rare Sites Land Securement Team. And one of our goals really was to address the issue that we see on the map here, which shows you the different areas of catchments for land trusts in Ontario. And Waterloo Region Wellington basically used to be what was called the hole in the donut, because there was rare, but we were only concentrated in one area. And this effort to form the Rare Sites Land Securement Team was an effort to increase that and to use Rare's organizational framework with the particular mandate to develop and implement a land securement strategy for the area that had lacking land trust that could take on more conservation lands here in Waterloo Region. Next slide, please. There are a number of other organizations in the area who have also an environmental focus that relates to the protection of land in one way or another. However, many of them are currently not actively acquiring new lands for conservation, or their focus is simply slightly different. For example, the Ontario Farmland Trust is a good partner, but their focus is really much more on farming easements. So many of the organizations here have since become partners in our efforts and are actually also members and have representatives on the Rare Sites Land Securement Team. Next, please. So why are we doing this? The purpose of a land securement strategy is basically to identify parcels of interest for conservation. And in our case, this meant applying a watershed perspective, as natural lands and ecosystem services really don't stop or end at municipal boundaries, and protecting the tributaries and headwaters of the Grand will have very much a positive impact on ecosystems further downstream. So the main criteria that were applied included ecological significance, connectivity, and size of potential parcels. So basically, we determined desirable characteristics of conservation land, like, for example, wetland, woodlands, floodplains, and also the proximity to existing secured land. And in Waterloo region, there is actually a considerable overlap with these types of features with the Greenlands network. So this analysis then was followed by also taking into account things such as urbanization threat, the potential for funding, and the geographical dispersion to really make sure that we could serve every lower tier municipality within the region of Waterloo and Wellington County with our efforts. And also, of course, we had to limit our activities to a reasonable number of landowner contacts that can be approached within a 5-year period of the first launch of this program. So this allowed for a modeling process that we called the RARE score, and that was undertaken in GIS, a Geographic Information System. So the way this works, you make layers in this Geographic Information System to identify any of those desirable characteristics of lands that I described earlier, and then you calculate the percentage of each parcel that consists of these types of lands. And the ones that score really high, say in the 90th to 95th percentile in terms of coverage, are what then resulted in what we can see on the next slide, please. Thank you. So in total, almost 15,000 parcels were analyzed using the GIS model, and we identified actually 17 target areas. There's a slight mistake here, unfortunately, with 365 properties. And each target area has 7 to 81 lots per that target. And those target areas really are basically nodes for conservation that have the most desirable land that we are looking at securing in the future. So you can see here, Wilmot is, of course, on the bottom left of this map. And there are 3 target areas that are fully or partially in Wilmot Township, which is the Sunfish Lake, Laurel Creek target area, the Phillipsburg Forest, and Hayesville Wetland. So these were areas that have been identified, and in total, we're looking at, I think, just under about 3,000 acres of property that has been identified that is of really high interest for conservation in the township. So that is really good news. We're already working with a number of landowners across Waterloo region on different properties in different stages of development for securement. We're also working with one major landowner right here in Wilmot Township already. So this is very exciting news because it's a really great way of how we can partner together and work together better towards conserving lands for the community to enjoy in perpetuity right here in the township. Next slide, please. So based on who we're already working with and the projects that are already in certain stages of development that we have on the short list, we are actually already way within that goal that we're aiming to secure in the next 5 years, which is 400 acres. Currently, the property we're looking at in total is almost close to 600 acres. So this is really, I think, good news because we're only just now really publicly more formally launching this, but we have already kind of started as we were developing it to reach out to certain landowners that we became aware of, or they reached out to us when they become aware of this effort. So it's currently at this point already way underway, which hopefully means we will see more land protected over time in Waterloo region and in the township as well. If you can move to the next slide, please. So to give you a better idea, here's an example of a project that is nearing completion and that we can hopefully wrap up within the next few months. This is the reason why earlier on the larger target area overview, the Roseville Swamp was highlighted, because we've already worked with those landowners, the Reiner family, on this acquisition for a couple of years. So this property, which you see here outlined in pink, I believe, is a property that's located sort of on the edge between Kitchener and North Dumfries. And it's part of the Roseville Swamp, which is everything that is outlined in blue here. And this is a good example because you see a number of other highlighted parcels on this map, which are properties that are already protected by other conservation partners, for example, the GRCA or Waterloo Region Nature. And really the long-term goal is to hopefully be able to secure and acquire in some way as many parcels in this natural feature as possible, and to connect them all so that we can create a large area for wildlife to roam in a large corridor that hopefully over a very long period of time is able to connect to other green areas and networks in the region. Next slide, please. So I think you received in your package a version of our land securement strategy that contains a lot more detail on some of the things I will briefly be talking about here. But one thing that we really wanted to highlight is that often landowners are only familiar with two options of what they can do with their land. They can sell it, or they can bequest it or leave it to their children. But depending on the conservation mindset of the owners, neither might be the best long-term option if the owner wishes to preserve the land for conservation. Next slide, please. So we hope that many of the lands that RARE is currently considering as part of this land securement strategy will over time hopefully come to RARE as land donations. As you all know, land is very expensive in Waterloo region, and we are also trying to raise a 20% stewardship endowment, 20% of the value of the land with every parcel RARE is going to acquire in future. So even with a land donation, it's a really big undertaking, but there are thankfully a lot of landowners, including landowners in the township, who are quite willing to work with us on that. And I think it's really in everyone's best interest that we together work on really respecting those landowners' wishes, because they are making a really large commitment and a really big gift to this community. Of course, there's other options as well, ranging from bequests to straight up land purchases, but there's also the option of a conservation easement, for example, where an illegal agreement would be put on title that spells out what exactly can happen to certain areas of a property. And we really hope also that we will be able to work with the regional and local municipal and township governments on conservation severances, because of course, as a charity and a land trust, we cannot really take on facilities or buildings. Our focus is really on the lands and the conservation of the lands themselves. Next, please. One thing I wanted to briefly touch on is that RARE is certified to receive donations under the federal eco-gifts program. And this program can actually be very attractive to landowners who consider a donation, as it comes with multiple benefits as listed here. And it also ensures an additional level of protection, because lands that were given as eco-gifts can only be held by eco-gifts recipients. So in the unlikely case that an organization should ever cease to exist, the land would have to go to another eco-gifts recipient, which really ensures the long-term protection in perpetuity of the lands that were given. Next, please. So thank you very much for letting me present here today, and for the previous support that I received at other council meetings that I was lucky enough to attend in person at the time. And I hope that this just gives you a brief idea of the opportunities that exist, and what we really would like to partner on with you. If you have landowners that you know that may own larger parcels of land that they would consider to give to the community, we would be more than happy to speak to them and speak to them about options and opportunities that exist for conservation in the township. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any questions? Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I have passing familiarity with some of your work at RARE, and am quite a fan. I had a question that came up for me in looking at the document that you sent us, the whole report. And maybe you don't have an answer. If you don't, that's okay. Just wondered, you have a land acknowledgement on at the beginning there. And I'm wondering if there is any interest, or if there's been any pursuit of connecting with Indigenous groups for doing some cultural practices or space on the lands that RARE is preserving.
Yeah, absolutely. That is already happening. In fact, we have had an Indigenous staff member since 2017 who was specifically hired in part for that purpose, to build better relationship and to lead truly Indigenous-led programs on the property. And there are several connections to traditional knowledge keepers who are already using those spaces. And there are further conversations with others on bringing in more traditional uses. Yeah.
Wonderful. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I have a follow-up as well. You mentioned the Phillipsburg Forest. I'm really interested in where that is.
Yeah, you know what? So am I, because I don't personally know the area well. In some of kind of these vernacular names might not be necessarily the name that it's best known at. So part of the homework we're currently doing still right now is to basically ground truth the information that the computer has spit out. Because as you may know, every model is only ever so good as the data you put in. So basically every model is always wrong. So you always have to kind of do the footwork and check what's actually there. So that's the type of things where we would really like to work more closely with someone at the township who knows the area better, because they would also perhaps be able to identify areas that we may not have captured, but that are locally quite well known.
Thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and we should acknowledge that Tom Woodcock was here as well. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary Jane Patterson from REAP. She was here.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello, Mary Jane. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone. Mayor Armstrong, councillors, staff, and residents. I think there may be residents listening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm with REAP Green Solutions. As you know, we're an environmental charity. We help you live sustainably. And we've brought our impact report to share with you, looking back over the past fiscal year, which ended just as COVID began, and also over 21 years of impact with REAP. So I know you've had the report and that you have some slides. We put some stats on the slides, and what I'll do tonight is let you read the stats and I'll give you a little context around each one. So the newest way, next slide, please. The newest way that we are helping people live sustainably is through tree stewardship. For a lot of communities, they know that A lot of the urban forest is on private property rather than municipal property. And if they want to increase the urban tree cover, they have to work with homeowners. And that's where we come in. We're working right now with the cities of Cambridge and Kitchener to support residents in planting new trees and learning how to care for the existing trees on their property. These are our results so far with 1 year under our belt. We had a hold up with COVID for a number of programs, including this one. So trees just went into the ground this fall that were supposed to go in the spring, and we've now caught up on that backlog and are putting in the new trees from this year's program. Next slide. So now on to water conservation. On behalf of the region of Waterloo, we provide free water audits for high water use homes. And now for those interested in the region's new water softener plumbing rebate. These also were held up for a few months due to COVID, but we're back at it now and we have some really careful COVID precautions in place. I checked our records, and over the past 4 years of this service, we've come to 41 Wilmot Township households and installed free water saving measures in 25 of them. And Wilmot residents may be interested to know that there's now a rebate of $50 for switching the plumbing of our water softener to soften only hot water. Also on this slide, we're talking about our stormwater management, so outside the home. We show people how to manage stormwater so that it will soak into the ground and restore our groundwater, and it doesn't become runoff that pollutes our local waterways. I think what's cool about this work is that at the same time, we're helping people have a beautiful, healthy yard. And often we're solving a problem they're having, some kind of flooding or water pooling in their yard. Next slide. Here's another project that works to restore groundwater, prevent flooding, and reduce runoff, Deep Pave Paradise. We love the Deep Pave projects we've been able to work on in the region. It's really cathartic, and now New Hamburg residents know that. Working with volunteers to rip up pavement and put in plants and trees that bring beauty and shade to the area. So far, we've worked with 2 schools on Deep Pave projects, and of course with the New Hamburg Board of Trade. We were able to bring the funding that supported our work in coordinating these projects. So we want to say a very big thanks to the Board of Trade and to township staff for all the time, energy, and resources that you brought to that Deep Pave. And Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Fenning, it was great to have you there on the Deep Pave Day, digging in with us. Next slide. Now here's the work that you know us for the most. In the past 21 years, we've evaluated the energy efficiency of 17,000 houses in Waterloo Region, including 326 in Wilmot Township. Over half of these homes have followed through on our recommendations to install energy upgrades, and their actions have reduced 27,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Looking to the future, we're working with our municipalities, including the region of Waterloo, to be able to provide low interest financing for homes to encourage more and deeper retrofits. A new initiative for us in the past couple of years has been Project Neutral, the online platform I introduced to you all last year. It helps us each calculate our own emissions and what we can do about them, and it gives an entry point through waste, water, travel, or home energy efficiency. So you can see that over 1,500 people have logged on now to learn more about their emissions. We've had some really nice results through lunch and learns with businesses, kind of reaching the homeowner at their place of work, and these have carried on to the virtual realm during the COVID time. Next slide. Our energy work in particular is in direct support of our local climate action plan and our long-term target to reduce the emissions in Waterloo Region by 80% by 2050. That's a big challenge, and in our partnership with Sustainable Waterloo Region and all the municipalities, we were able to bring 2 years of funding to help us create that long-term action plan. And we're so pleased to have the Township of Wilmot join us in that application and to be working with you now on that plan. You can see by the results all of the community consultation that is helping us inform that plan. And that includes our team popping up at the New Hamburg Fall Fair and Mopar Fest. The funding has also allowed us to bring capacity building workshops to our municipalities on topics like energy storage, carbon budgeting, and embodied carbon. Those are specifically targeted to municipal staff to help all of us be more up to speed on these kinds of topics. And recordings for those are still available for anybody that didn't get a chance to see them the first time around. Shoot. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna hang that up. Okay, I think I did that. Normally I go to mute, but then I wouldn't be able to keep going. Okay, the last part of the climate action plan slide is that we hope to have an action plan to bring to councils this winter. Next slide. A big part of what we do is community outreach in many different ways, and that includes the very exciting Zero Waste Challenge. Today is the first day of Waste Reduction Week, and it's the first day of the 7-day Zero Waste Challenge that REAP runs. This is such a neat way to take a look at our waste, pay attention to it, and think about what we can do to reduce what we send to landfill. So the goal is for 7 days, anything that can't be composted or recycled goes in a mason jar. I'm taking part in the 30-day challenge. I'm closing in on 3 weeks now. You can see that I'm in big trouble, but that's okay, because the point of it is to learn about what's going in this jar and think about how I can shop differently to reduce that. And then share that, which I did today on Facebook. If you're wondering how you can support our work in Wilmot Township, this is a really cool thing to do with your family. Kids, get into this. Just post a photo of your family with your jar and tell us what are you learning? What are the things that are being revealed, or what are you going to do differently when you're shopping? And use the hashtag Zero Waste Challenge. So, and don't worry about the Ben & Jerry's carton sticking out of the top. We are all on the journey together. Next slide. Donations are incredibly helpful in supporting REAP's work, especially for unfunded initiatives like the Zero Waste Challenge and a lot of our outreach activities. It's a way to directly support local environmental action, and we so appreciate our donors. Next slide. We are very pleased to say that we returned to a positive balance this past year. In the last few years, we've been investing in program development, and some of that has come to fruition. We also strive to have a diversity of sources of revenue as a way to build in resilience, and we're really drawing on that resilience this year with the impacts of COVID causing some of our programs to come to a halt for several months. In the next slide, you can really get a sense of that diversity in our partners. These are many of the partners that partnered with us this past year, or funders, and it gives you a sense of the collaboration that's really the key to all of this work. And last slide. So I'll end with a very big thank you. This is the most important slide. Our core funders make all the difference in helping us have the capacity to go out and find programs to bring to our community and find funding for those programs too, like DPAVE. So Mayor Armstrong, you're a part of the Region of Waterloo Council, and the region is one of our core funders, and we want to say thank you very much for that support. Together, we are helping people live sustainably. And that is all.
Thank you, Mary Jane. We appreciate your presentation. It's very informative, and I think a lot of people, especially on this council, are involved in making those reductions as best they can. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wanted to share my jar. I'm doing the 30-day challenge as well.
Wow, you're way ahead of me.
I have some advantages living on a farming and being able to have food that has no packaging at all because I take it from my field.
That's fantastic.
But I don't know if you know, but last year we in Wilmot Township declared October Zero Waste Month.
Oh.
And so we have been very grateful for the social media content that you guys are generating, because we're sharing it as
That's
part of
great.
our participation in that. And yeah, the Sustainability Committee has been pretty keen on it. And some of our staff have put out some phenomenal videos. So
Okay,
yeah.
we're going to look out for those, and I'll pass that on to our communications manager. She'll be really pleased to hear that.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks.
Councillor Hallman?
Thank you. Through the mayor, Mary Jane, I just wanted to express my thanks for the depaving program in New Hamburg. My daughter and I had an absolute great time participating in that. She was thrilled as an 11-year-old girl to be so welcomed into your community that way, and slip on the steel toe boots and get her hands in there. This is a very passionate piece for her. So I wanted to thank you for your involvement with youth as well. It's amazing for what you do for the youth in our community.
That's so great to hear. Thank you for being part of that. I'll relay that back to Patrick. He'll be really happy, because I know his son was also digging in that day, and it is cool to see younger people really getting into this.
Thank you, Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just a quick question, Mary Jane. I know that the city of Kitchener, although it might have gone through the region as well, has programs to help people with water gardens or rock gardens or whatever, permeable gardens, whatever the term might be, and little mini competitions and things like that. Has there been any outreach within the townships to do something similar? Because out here, as you may know, we have a lot of grass. It's a bit of a bugaboo for me because of the water issue. So I'm just curious as to, is there any plans to sort of come out here and do something that might get people to sort of know about other options for their gardens and their backyards and front yards?
Well, we would love to. When I think about how our partnerships have come about, it's been working with the municipality to help the municipality fulfill its own objectives. So we're sometimes hired by the municipality, or we look for funding together. So if Wilmot would like to partner with us, we could see if we could find some funding together on that. It might be interesting to consider what would be different in a rural context. It's usually, city pavement that we're looking at, or not pavement. I'm thinking of deep pave there. Rain gardens, often it's also related to flooding, such as, like someone's runoff goes down the street, downhill into someone else's basement, that kind of thing. So there are some communities that don't even want us to tell anybody that they're working there because they don't want people to know that they've had flooding. But I think that we'd be very happy to work with Wilmot Township if there's a desire to do that.
Okay, thank you. That's something that can be investigated.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I see no further questions. So thank you, Mary Jane, for coming and your presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, my pleasure. Good night, all.
Good night. So the next item up is the consent agenda. We are now into the consent agenda. If members of council have any questions and want to remove an item from the consent agenda, please indicate so now, as we will not take questions on consent items unless the items are requested to be removed to the regular agenda. So everybody is good with the consent agenda? Okay, so the recommendation that the report numbers FD 2020-04, ILS 2020-27, CK 2020-004, DS 2020-023, ILS 2020-30, and ILS 2020-29 be approved. Moved by Councillor Hallman, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next item is the amendment to the exotic animal bylaw. Ms. Merritt is going to address this.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. The report before you tonight details proposed amendments to the exotic animal bylaw. These amendments came about because of recent changes to the township zoning bylaw, allowing for the raising of laying hens within settlement areas of a certain size within the township. It was pointed out to us before tonight's meeting that some of the sentence flow wasn't correct in sections 5.3 and 5.4. We have since changed the sentence structure, but not the intent of any of the points in the bylaw. Dawn, I think you were going to share those changes. I wanted to thank Councillor Gordick for the heads up, and my apologies for these errors. This process has been a learning experience for me. The additions to the bylaw outlined the requirements for raising of laying hens, such as lands permitted, location and conditions of coops, pens, lofts, and runs. These requirements came out of concerns raised by residents during the zoning bylaw public consultation, as well as research into what other municipalities are doing for their communities in this regards, and also information obtained through OMAFRA. These proposed changes also allow for a one-time licensing fee to be collected after an application has been approved. Also, the name of this bylaw would be changed from the exotic animal bylaw to the animal control bylaw excluding dogs. This name change better represents what the bylaw regulates. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I can't see the thing. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Merritt. One thing I noticed that's possibly missing there is our fines. Should that be in the package?
Through you, oh, go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Ms. Holt.
Thank you, through Mayor Armstrong. So in the past, we have provided the set fines for council. However, we no longer include that as part of the bylaw package. The reason for that is set fines are approved at the provincial level. So for us to have it approved at council, but then go through the process through the province would mean that each and every little change that the province might request would require us to come back to council for approval. So really it's a duplication of approval that is not necessary, but also cumbersome. So set fines will be approved at the provincial level.
Could I just have a follow-up?
You can.
So, so those fines, would they be identified like, say somebody has 20 chickens instead of 4? Like, are they those type of set fines, or how would that be?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, Ms. Merritt and I have yet to discuss exactly what all these set fines will be. However, it is bore out of the bylaw itself, and you would imagine that they would be very similar to what we do for our kennels for our dogs. So if the coops are not in proper condition, if they exceed the number of hens, then that's where those fines would come out of. However, I'm going to say, as we do with most of our bylaws, we try for education and voluntary compliance first before we lay fines. Ms. Merritt, do you have anything further you wanted to add to that?
No, I would just agree with you. The fines would definitely mirror what we already do for, say, like dog kennels, stuff like that.
And also, I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, but Ms. Merritt is awesome as well, not just Ms. Jones. Thank you.
I don't care what you say. You're all awesome. Ms. Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just wanted to say good work. I'm really happy to see this come forward, and yeah, good job.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'm just thinking that it might be helpful. I received a couple of messages right before council. People looking to clarify the difference between this chicken coop not affecting agricultural zoned farming chicken operations, that this is for coops in residential zoned areas.
That is correct. These recommendations, changes to the bylaw would only come into play with the coops that are in residential areas as per the zoning bylaw. It would not have any sort of regulations to the larger farming operations.
Thank you. And a follow-up question. Can you take some time to explain how staff arrived at the $100 fee?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. The fee of $100 was decided upon as a one-time only fee because zoning has to be checked with first and foremost through the planning department. Depending on the size of the coop that is built, a building application may have to be processed or work with the building department through that, as well as there will be an inspection done by bylaw staff going out there to ensure that the coop meets the regulations of the license, as well as the license being issued. The cost will also help offset any additional enforcement that would be needed with allowing backyard hens.
Through the mayor, thank you so much. That was a great answer. I appreciate those clarification questions.
Ms. Middleholt.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I would also like to just add to what Ms. Merritt provided, in that the fee that's associated with a new dog kennel is a higher fee because it requires much more thorough inspections and subsequent inspections as well.
Okay, thank you. You have another comment, Councillor Hallman? Go ahead.
My apologies. Through the mayor, I do have one more note that I made here before, looking for clarification on why the hens need to be 4 months old.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. In the readings I had done regarding backyard hens, to which before starting this, my knowledge was zero. In reading much of the information that was provided on the OMAFRA website, as well as other bylaws in other areas, most mentioned this 4-month-old hens. One is to ensure that the animal is a hen and not a rooster, because that's a problem. And also it was mentioned that there's some shots or that are given to baby birds to help protect them from some of the diseases that may be passed. And so that's why I gather it's 4 months to ensure, I guess, that there's healthy birds that hopefully do not have any sort of diseases that could, hurt any humans or other fowl population.
Go ahead, Councillor Hallman. You have a follow-up?
Just want to thank you for that clarification.
All the knowledge you're gaining, Miss Merritt, it's fantastic. You're going to want to buy 5 acres out here someplace. So, okay. If there's no further questions, the recommendation that bylaw 2020-39 be adopted in respect to the raising of laying hens within settlement areas of the Township of Wilmot. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? Perfect, that's passed. Statement of operations, Mr. Kelly.
Actually going to hand that over to my awesome Deputy Treasurer, Ashton Romney, to handle.
Did we have an awesome night? That's good.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report outlines the third quarter operating results. As of the report date, we were at 75.7% of the net effect on a general levy, while comparing to 2019, which was 75.1%. Perhaps the most notable item on these statements is recreation, parks, facilities and recreation revenue, with receipts at 32.3% of budget, which is a slight increase over Q2. Receipts at this point in Q3 2019 were actually just under 70%. This decrease was obviously a result of the closure of facilities earlier in the year and reduced activity at the facilities. So coupled with this foregone revenue, you'll see across several line items on statements assist in reducing the overall impact on the levy. Outside of recreation, COVID has impacted other several areas throughout the organization, and various note disclosures are made throughout the statements where applicable. So the forthcoming COVID-19 financial impact report outlines further detail regarding the impacts. And thank you, and staff are here to answer any questions.
Okay, the recommendation that report COR 2020-035, Statement of Operations unaudited as of September 30th, 2020, as prepared by the Manager of Finance, Deputy Treasurer, be received for information purposes. Councillor Fenning, you have a question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I just, as we were going through the reports tonight and the ICE needs study, we've been getting updates on changes to the budget, and typically we have received work plans for all the departments by this point a lot earlier than this. And I'm wondering, I guess this question is to Mr. Whittington, where those work plans are at, because I believe they would have been submitted early in the winter. And if we could get them presented to council with changes. Because I mean, I know everybody's work plans got turned upside down for the year. And just, you know, so we can have an idea of what was planned and what has had to be deferred and changed through the year.
Through the mayor. We had been working on doing the work programs right at a time when we were also pulling together the strategical plan process. And when COVID came along, recognizing we wanted to tie the work program into the new strategical plan, we just pushed everything aside and then reacted more to the issues of COVID and reacting to the budget process that was in front of us and making sure that was both the COVID and the budget were implemented. And this was discussed with the senior management team, and we felt those were the priorities. And that's what we've been working on. What we're now working on, and that's where you'll see that we're now getting to the stage where soon we'll be providing the strategical plan. And what our intentions were is then we would be providing an update on the work program that time.
That's good. Okay, we just need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gerber, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is the capital program. I'm assuming Mr. Romney is up as well.
Great.
Awesome. Ashton is up.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report outlines the Q3 capital program update. As of the report date, approximately 38% of approved funding has been spent. Due to COVID-19, a number of projects and timelines were revised, and there is criteria, I believe, outlined in the report and also in previous reports to council. So attached, you'll find the report statements outline the status of each active capital project, and staff are here to answer any questions.
Jeez. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. The recommendation that report FIN 2020-036 capital program review as of September 30th, 2020, unaudited as prepared by the manager of finance / deputy treasurer be received for information purposes. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, seconded by Councillor Fanning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the next report is the financial impact analysis under COVID-19 update. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This is the third time which we brought forward a report regarding our estimated impacts from COVID-19 to keep council and the community abreast of where we think we're going to land at the end of the year. Obviously, this is a forecast and not set in stone. Just draw attention to the appendix, which outlines our July forecast versus the adjusted forecast. First of all, I'll say, first and foremost, all the departments, pretty proud of the efforts of this organization. The projected reduction in overall expenditures of nearly $1 million, $934,000. So it shows that all departments took our cost containment measures and cost containment strategy seriously and have deployed that where possible. Obviously, a number of those costs had to do with staffing, and though challenging to reduce staffing levels throughout COVID, it did produce significant savings to help us offset the revenue reductions that you can see there forecasted at 1.4 million. Overall, we're looking at a operating impact of a deficit of just over $500,000, coupled with around $83,000 in spending on COVID-19 capital expenditures, which were just in the previous report. As you were notified previously, the township received $483,000 approximately in Safe Restart agreement funding, which puts our overall deficit around $110,000. I did sit on, along with all the other area treasurers, presentation on phase 2 Safe Restart funding. In that presentation, it indicated that municipal reserve funds will be the target as to where people should be looking to offset any operating deficits. I think I share the sentiments of a lot of treasurers where that's challenging for us to hear that municipalities that have been fiscally responsible, I'll say, and have built up resources for infrastructure replacements and other critical needs are almost being jeopardized somewhat through the phase 2 funding to support COVID. So with that being said, it's very unlikely and pretty much zero chance that Wilmot would be the recipient of funding under phase 2 of this agreement. As such, we won't be submitting an application. That's similar to several municipalities within this region that also have strong financial footing to cope with at least the early onset of COVID-19. So if there's any questions from council, that is our updated forecast, and we're happy to attend to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, and Patrick and Ashton and your staff. You've done an amazing job, I believe, and nobody had predicted the onslaught of this terrible disease. And I think probably all those years of really running a tight ship and keeping herself in a good financial position is really showing dividends here now, and really running a tight ship through this disease-ridden time is really amazing as well. So great job for everybody. Thanks.
Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I am going to echo a lot of what Councillor Fisher said. I know it hasn't been easy having to rejuggle priorities and try to figure out how to make the numbers match. So really appreciate the work from your team. And thinking about the answer from Mr. Whittington, I'd like to be circulated on those work programs. I believe they do exist. The directors will have prepared them. And just for information for council, if we could, I would personally appreciate being able to take a look at them, and so we can discuss what we look at, what was planned, and again, with the financial aspects, we've been talking about the impacts, and I think we need to look at the impacts to the other departments as well.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that report COR 2020-37 outlining the projected financial impact resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic be received for information purposes, and further that the Township of Wilmot continue to advocate and pursue funding opportunities from senior government sources to offset the negative financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, coming from Public Works, the award of contract for 4x4 crew cab. Mr. Mullenhughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report outlining the purchasing process for a scheduled replacement of a roads department service vehicle. It is utilized in seasonal operations activity with future plans to purchase a blade and salter for this particular unit, which will allow this unit to be more of an operational unit for the winter control season as well, which is a bit of a different setting than this vehicle currently has. But it will give us the ability to do some more narrower road segments and bridge locations as well. So recommendation is before you. As you can see from the recommendation, there is a bit of budget left. And as noted there, we are looking to purchase some blade and salter equipment as well for this unit. Recommendation before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none. The recommendation that RFP 2020-20 be awarded to Barry Cullen Chevrolet Cadillac Limited to supply and deliver one 2021 Silverado 2500 4x4 crew cab pickup truck as per their proposal dated September 22, 2020, and in the amount of $45,496.41 plus HST, sorry. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next is the extension of the contract 2020 from winter maintenance to 2021. Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report recommends extending the parking lot and sidewalk winter control contract that we currently have with an existing contractor with Dundee Nursery and Landscaping for the 2020 and 2021's winter season. I apologize for this being a late addition. That's a fault of mine coming to the agenda, but staff are working through some late negotiations with this particular vendor coming into the season. We were slightly delayed in getting it onto the agenda to where we wanted it to be. So we worked late last week finalizing the levels of service and negotiated further with the vendor to conclude and to recommend this report before you. In consultation with the CAO and the Director of Corporate Services Treasurer, this was deemed as beneficial to the township in the current circumstance, as we required some flexibility with traditional levels of service. And again, this will allow us to align in future years with an existing winter control contract that we have in other locations in the township that's scheduled to be reposted next year. So this particular process, obviously with what's outlined here, it's anticipated to result in some winter control cost savings as we've looked at some levels of service and reduced in some areas where we deemed it beneficial and warranted to do so. The recommendation here is before you to extend with this contractor. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, recommendation that the extension of the existing contract be approved for snow clearing services with Dundee Nursery and Landscaping in the amount of $126,140.78 plus HST. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is correspondence. And the recommendation that items 12.1 and 12.2 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Hallman, seconded by Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the bylaws. The recommendation that bylaws number 2020-38 and 2020-39 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any notice of motions? Seeing none. Announcements. I have one I'll start off with, is that on October 22nd, 2020, at 6 p.m., the 4 townships in Waterloo Region will be having an informational meeting to have KPMG present their interim report on the findings of the Joint Services Review. This meeting will be hosted by Wilmot over YouTube. To make it official, we need to pass a motion to have the meeting added to the council agenda. Okay. Councillor Hallman. Are you making the motion, or because you have the hands up there for any questions? You don't have any questions? No? Okay. So it's The recommendation that the council meeting schedule be amended to include October 22nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. for a Waterloo Township's all council meeting to be held electronically. So that is moved by Councillor Hallman, second by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Okay, Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I wanted to thank the Optimist clubs of our community. They are all independently offering the youth a different Halloween activity to make sure that kids who are choosing not to participate in Halloween this year have an activity to participate safely at home. Most of them are doing pumpkin carving. So regardless of the settlement area you live in, check out your local Optimist Club's Facebook page for all those details. It's absolutely heartwarming to see that they're still finding ways to keep the youth engaged in Wilmot. Additionally, I wanted to comment that Small Business Week starts tomorrow. And this time of year, small businesses heavily rely on people supporting them. Now, this year more than ever, think about supporting your local small businesses with the purchases that you make. With that said, there's a new small business in New Dundee that's just opened up called the New Dundee Arts Collective. So with a new business starting during COVID as well, be sure to keep them on your mind when you're looking for holiday seasonal gifts perhaps. And thank you to the mayor for acknowledging Breast Cancer Awareness Week, as 1 in 3 women will die from, who are diagnosed, will die from breast cancer, and 1 in 8 women in Canada will have it at some point in their lifetime. It is one of the cancers that is being highly successful with treatments. So I kind of guess that circles back to Councillor Gordick just a little bit through the Terry Fox Foundation, and thanking them for their efforts towards that, as funding towards Terry Fox and funding towards cancer is changing lives in Canadians. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So it is still Zero Waste October. So anybody who hasn't yet, you still have time to participate in the Mason Jar Challenge. And definitely check out those videos from some of our directors, and follow along with a lot of the other tips that we've been sharing on the social media platforms. I want to say thank you to the communications. I'm really excited to have the Facebook page up and active, and followers are rising, so that's great. I also want to say a really big thank you to particularly the Klassen family and Mike Scout for having contributed so much to trails in this community, and for all the volunteers on the committee that have come out to help us with our latest project. And I can't wait to share it with all of you when it's ready. It's been really wonderful to be involved in that and to see how much joy it's bringing to people. I've gotten a lot of feedback, especially about the Lashinger trails being open, and everybody's really happy about that. And it's providing such a great thing in our community, especially right now. And Halloween, I don't know who all's gonna be joining me, but I will be there at the rec center, handing out candy or directing traffic, whatever they need me to do. The Wilmot Family Resource Center has put together a great program for kids on Saturday afternoon, so I hope you'll check it out if you haven't already, and we'll see you there.
Thank you. And we also want to remember that there is an all council meeting this Thursday. Hey, on the 22nd, sorry. And what time does it start?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on the 22nd. So be there, be square, I guess. That's the only other statement to make, I guess. There are no other announcements. Next item is the confirmatory bylaw. Recommendation that bylaw number 2020-40 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on October 19, 2020, be introduced, read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Moved by, okay, Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Now, the next recommendation is that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Moved by Councillor Gerber, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe evening and a safe trip home.